Imagine an extreme state, so dense and so hot, that all the laws of physics as we know them no longer apply. From this condition, around 13.8 billion years ago, the entire universe began to expand. This event is known as the Big Bang, the beginning of space, time, and matter. But here, science falls silent. At the most mysterious boundary where the laws of physics collapse, the most fundamental questions echo. What was there before the Big Bang? Before time began? Before space expanded? What existed? Absolute nothingness? Or something beyond human comprehension? This is not just a scientific puzzle, but a question that shakes common sense, stirs the imagination, and opens the door to the most sacred realms. Is there a creator behind the veil of the cosmos? In this video, we will journey to the edge of human knowledge, explore the boundaries of modern science, delve into philosophical arguments that have been debated for thousands of years, and see how these two realms, often considered contradictory, can actually reinforce each other in answering eternal questions. If the universe has a beginning, could God be the inevitable first cause? We will start by dissecting scientific findings. What does the Big Bang Theory say about the origin of the universe? And why the concept of before might be an illusion according to modern physics? Then, we will enter the realm of philosophy, where pure logic offers principles of cause and effect that lead to a transcendent reality. From there, we will seek the harmony between sacred texts and the laws of the cosmos, and face sharp criticism from skeptics. In the end, you will find that this question is not just an academic debate, but a quest that touches the essence of our own existence. Let's start with what science believes. Our universe, with all its galaxies, stars, and life, began from a tremendous cosmic expansion known as the Big Bang. The evidence is written in the sky, the faintly glowing microwaves that galaxies are moving away from each other in the ongoing expansion of space-time. But behind all that lies a disturbing puzzle: singularity, a theoretical condition with nearly zero volume and infinite density. Where the laws of physics as we know them collapse, at this brink of creation, science faces a wall of darkness. If time was born with the Big Bang, then what does the word before mean? Can we even ask about before if time did not exist to measure anything? Imagine an hourglass. The grains of sand represent moments of time, flowing from the future to the past. But what if we turn the hourglass over and ask, what was there before the first grain fell? That question is absurd, because the hourglass itself creates the flow of time. So it is with the Big Bang. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is a property of the universe. Without the universe, time loses its meaning. So when a physicist says, nothing existed before the Big Bang, it is not an evasion, but rather an assertion that the question might be misguided. It's like asking, what is north of the North Pole? However, humans are not creatures who give up easily. Some bold theories attempt to penetrate the wall of singularity. One of them is loop quantum gravity, which in its cosmological model proposes that our universe might be the result of a bounce, a contraction from a previous universe. There is also the idea of the multiverse, that the Big Bang is just one of an infinite number of explosions in a sea of quantum void. But here, the limits of modern science become apparent. These theories are speculative, untested, and most importantly, they still do not answer the fundamental question. If there was something before the Big Bang, then what caused that something to exist? Every answer only shifts the question to a deeper layer, like an endless cosmic matryoshka. In the end, modern science arrives at a crossroads. On one side, the Big Bang is the best story we have about the origin of everything. On the other hand, it leaves a fundamental question. How could something arise from what seems like nothingness? Was it truly without cause? Or do the laws of nature operate in ways we do not yet understand? At this point, physics must acknowledge its limitations, not as a failure, but as a recognition that the universe, with all its complexity, might hold secrets that can only be accessed through deeper logic or higher wisdom. And in the silence of that ignorance, a question echoes. If science cannot answer, might we need to step outside the laboratory? Since the time of Aristotle, humans have understood one unshakable law. Everything that begins to exist must have a cause. Fire ignites because of the friction of wood. Rain falls because of the evaporation of water. Even this magnificent universe, if it indeed has a beginning, must have a preceding cause. But what if we go back to the most extreme point? If the Big Bang is the beginning of time, then what caused that beginning? Here, science falls silent, but the human mind refuses to stop. Imagine an endless row of dominoes. Each domino falls because it is pushed by the previous domino. But if there is no first domino, does it mean all the dominoes fall by themselves? Logic rejects this. There must be a first, an uncaused cause. The first cause that moves everything, without ever being moved. This is the core of the cosmological argument, rooted in Islamic thinkers like Al-Ghazali, and reformulated by William Lane Craig in modern form. The first premise, the universe began to exist. Scientific evidence like the Big Bang model supports this claim. The second premise, everything that begins to exist must have a cause. This is a basic principle of rationality that even scientists use every day. So the conclusion is unavoidable. The universe has a cause beyond itself. But here skeptics ask, if God is the cause of the universe, then what caused God? This question misses the essence. The first cause must exist by itself, not bound by time, space, or cause. It is a necessary being, an existence that is not dependent on anything. While the universe is a contingent being, limited, fragile, and in need of explanation, some try to hide behind the idea of infinite regression, an endless chain of cause and effect. But imagine a writer who writes a novel about a writer who writes a novel continuously, without end. Can that story exist without the first real writer outside the story? Impossible. The same goes for the universe. The chain of cause and effect requires a foundation, an uncreated, eternal, and self-sustaining reality. Without it, we are stuck with the idea that something arises from absolute metaphysical nothingness, an absurdity even harder to believe than a miracle. This is where we stand, at the crossroads of metaphysics. If we reject the existence of a first cause, then we must accept that the universe, with all its mathematical precision and physical laws, just appeared out of nothingness for no reason. But the question remains, which is more reasonable, to believe in a source-less miracle, or to acknowledge an intelligence beyond space and time? This is not about creating a God to fill the gaps in science. This is about undeniable logic. The first cause, rationally, must have three main attributes. First, it is infinite because it transcends space and time. Second, it is omnipotent because it creates existence from relative nothingness. Third, it is willful because the Big Bang is a temporal event, not a directionless mechanical process. This profile, in philosophy called being itself, fits only one entity, namely God. Not a mythical God or an anthropomorphic figure, but the ultimate reality, the foundation of all existence. As physicist Freeman Dyson said, the more I study the universe, the more evidence I find that something behind it must know we are here. The question now is not whether God exists, but whether we are ready to accept the logical consequences of the questions we ask. If this argument is valid, then God is not a myth, but a logical conclusion of existence. But can science and religion truly unite in one coherent narrative? Let us continue. History often depicts science and religion as two giants battling, but behind that narrative of conflict lies a deeper story. Both are two sides of the same coin. Science asks how the universe works. Religion seeks why it exists. And at their intersection, we find similar traces: mathematical order, precise beauty, and unreachable mystery. Look at George Lemaitre, a Catholic priest and physicist who first proposed the Big Bang theory. For him, the cosmic explosion was not a threat to faith, but a praise to the Creator. Or Isaac Newton, who wrote thousands of pages of theological commentary. For them, delving into the laws of nature was a form of respect for the Creator. So the question is, must we choose between the laboratory and the altar? Or should we realize that both lead to the same source? Let us listen to the holy verses with cosmological ears. In the Quran, Surah Al-Anbiya verse 30 states, "And do the disbelievers not know that the heavens and the earth were once joined together? Then we separated them. a poetic description that symbolically reminds us of the expansion of the cosmos. In the book of Genesis, the phrase "in the beginning" implies that time has a beginning, a concept that was entirely revolutionary in ancient cultures. Is this just a coincidence? Or perhaps a hint that sacred text and the laws of nature originate from the same reality? Not as a science book, but as a symbol that gently whispers. There is an all-knowing behind the veil of reality. But the greatest strength of this argument lies in the numbers. Our universe is a masterpiece with parameters too precise to be called a coincidence. Gravitational force, for example, if it were slightly stronger, stars could collapse before forming. The cosmological constant, if it were slightly different, galaxies would never be born. Even the electron charge, if it changed by 0.01%, the chemical structure that allows life would be greatly disrupted. The probability of all this happening by chance is smaller than one atom in the entire galaxy. Some scientists call this the anthropic principle of the universe, which seems to fit because we are here to observe it. But is that an explanation or merely a hidden acknowledgement that there is an intelligence that deliberately set those parameters? As physicist Paul Davies said, the laws of physics seem to know we are coming. Even the multiverse theory, often used as an escape from divine arguments, actually strengthens the same premise. If there truly are infinite universes with random laws, why do we live in the only one that is so perfectly suited for life? It's like finding a needle in a desert and concluding that there must be infinite deserts with infinite needles. But isn't it more logical to think that the needle was deliberately placed? Here, modern science has unconsciously reopened an ancient door. The question of the existence of a cosmic mind is not about a God hiding in the gaps of ignorance, but God as the logical foundation of the laws of nature itself, making order possible and existence happen. This integration is certainly not without criticism. Skeptics say it is merely confirmation bias, matching symbols with science, but history shows otherwise. Sacred texts never pretended to be laboratory books. They do not correct science, they give it meaning. When Galileo looked at the sky and declared that the earth revolves around the sun, the church may have been wrong, but the sacred texts only said, "The heavens declare the glory of God." Psalm chapter 19, verse 1. And today, the James Webb Telescope whispers the same thing, in a new way. Perhaps the biggest question is not whether science and religion can reconcile, but whether we are humble enough to acknowledge that both are two ladders leading to the same sky. A sky that we will never fully climb. Yet behind this harmony, sharp criticisms still await. Is the divine argument just another beautiful illusion? At the end of the limitations of science, let us face these objections with a cool head. The sharpest criticism comes from naturalists like Richard Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson. You are just filling the gaps in scientific ignorance with God. In the past, lightning was considered the anger of the gods. Now we understand electromagnetism. Thus, the Big Bang is also considered just a matter of time before it is fully explained. This argument is known as the God of the Gaps, making God a deus ex machina, for mysteries that have not yet been solved. But here, they are mistaken because the first cause argument does not arise from confusion but from basic logic. Everything that begins to exist has a cause, and modern science shows that our universe has a starting point. So this is not about what we do not know yet, but what we know for sure. And that requires an explanation that goes beyond physics, as the philosopher Anthony Flew, a staunch atheist who eventually acknowledged the existence of a transcendent intelligence, said, "We must follow the evidence wherever it leads." Bertrand Russell and Sean Carroll both try to evade by saying, the universe might be a brute fact, existing just like that without explanation. But this is an admission of defeat in logic. Imagine a detective finding a corpse in a locked room, then saying, "He died without cause, a brute fact?" We would reject it as absurd, and so it is with the universe. The principle of ex nihilo nihil fit, from nothing comes nothing, is the foundation of rationality since ancient philosophy. Ignoring it is not just a mistake, but it shakes the entire structure of our scientific and philosophical thinking. Even skeptical philosophers like David Hume acknowledge that our ignorance of a cause does not mean that the cause does not exist. True rationality refuses to stop at ignorance. It demands an explanation to the root. One of the most frequently heard criticisms is, if God created the universe, who created God? But this ignores one fundamental thing. the definition of God in cosmological arguments. God is not a physical entity that appears in time. He is a necessary being, an existence that is necessary, without beginning, and independent. Asking who created God is as mistaken as asking, how much does the color red weigh? It is a category mistake. Imagine the number 0 in a series of numbers. All other numbers depend on their position. 1, -1, 2, -2. But 0 exists on its own. God is the cosmic zero, the central point of all existence that does not require an origin because he is the origin itself. There is also a popular narrative that the history of science is a story of religion being eroded, but data and history say otherwise. A survey published by Nature shows that about 40% of scientists believe in a personal God, a figure that has remained relatively stable for more than a century. Nobel laureates like Max Planck and Werner Heisenberg even saw harmony, not conflict, between science and spirituality. Conflict is an illusion sold for sensation, not a reflection of academic reality as stated in Pascal's wager summary. If religion is wrong, we lose little, but if atheism is wrong, we lose everything. At the end of the day, all these criticisms boil down to one question. Which makes more sense? The universe emerged from nothingness, violating the principle of causality that underpins science, or there is a transcendent cause unbound by time and space. Physics may be silent about what happened before the Big Bang, but as Einstein said, in his spirit of wonder at the cosmos, science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind, and between the two, we find traces of eternal logic. If all lines of thought lead to one point, can we ignore it just because it is invisible? Let's piece together this puzzle in a final conclusion. After exploring the limits of science, delving into the depths of philosophical arguments, and challenging the rebuttals of skeptics, we arrive at one inevitable knot. The Big Bang is not just the beginning of time, it is the gateway to the most profound question. Why is there something, rather than nothing? Science, with all its brilliance, stops at the brink of singularity. Philosophy, with its sharp logic, demands a first cause, and between them lie two possibilities: a universe from meaningless void or a reality beyond space and time. If we're honest, this answer doesn't satisfy our curiosity. God can't be proven in a lab, like love can't be weighed, but like love, lack of evidence isn't proof of absence. We have traces, the universe's precision, the need for an uncaused cause, and a design too perfect to be chance. As Stephen Hawking concluded, God might not be the answer we want, but could be the answer we need. Here, we are not imposing faith. We acknowledge that behind knowledge's veil, there's a mystery approached with humility, admitting humans might not be the ultimate truth keepers. So, where do we stand before two astonishing miracles? First, the universe appeared without reason or direction. Second, there's a creator who placed us here, among stars and consciousness. If we choose the second, we acknowledge that even today's questions were part of its design. In the end, the question of what was before the Big Bang isn't just a physics puzzle. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's longing for meaning. As philosopher Blaise Pascal said, there's a God-shaped void in every human heart. Maybe, behind that singularity, time itself waits for us to not just ask, but to listen. And maybe, in the silence between these words, we've all heard something. Thanks for completing this journey with us. If there's one thing we can take, let it be humility, while continuing to ask, seek, and maybe find.